Christian von Lauer was just about to follow up on a quick thing, and I had to jump to the break. So go ahead if you had more.
Yeah,
there
you mentioned that it sounds like we have a whole entourage behind us. I had been picking up something earlier that you were hearing sounds when you were younger. Is that true? Have you been hearing voices or sounds when you were younger, or do you hear sounds around you now and you don't know what's there, and you find yourself turning to the left or the right?
I'm not sure that I would call them that. Every so once in a while, I think I hear my name.
Exactly.
But that's it. I mean, I've never had a feeling that there was.
But see, that's very, very important what you just said. It's such a common trait. One of the first things that we will hear when there's either nature spirits trying to speak to us or spirits from the other side is our name, and that's because your mind recognizes your name more easily. And the reason it sounds like it's behind us or to the side is because it's basically a different dimension, so things come in angularly. The reason I wanted to mention it is if people will tell themselves, just say it to yourself, that I'm hearing spirit or I'm hearing nature spirit, one or the other, when they hear those sounds, or if they see movement off to the side, then your subconscious mind will stop blocking it, and you'll have the truer experience of those things. You had said you haven't actually seen them or experienced them. I'm trying to tell you how you can stop yourself from preventing you from hearing and seeing them.
Okay. I like the thought of that. I really am. I mean, I'm completely open to it. I'm not sure how it fits in my cosmology, so it's a little bit of an adjustment there, but I think there are many other people out there that are anxious to try to figure out where this fits with them, too, so we'll give them their chance to ask questions of Christian von Lauer, Dr. Christian von Lauer, and Christopher Valentine, co-authors of a series of books on elves, leprechauns, gnomes, fairies, and so much more. You're part of the conversation next on Coast to Coast AM. This is Ian Punnett. So let's get to the phones right away for Dan in Lakewood, California on Coast to Coast AM. He's talking with Christian and Christopher. Go ahead, Dan.
Good evening, gentlemen. Good evening, Christian, and good evening, Christopher. I enjoy this topic because I have a story for you.
Okay, Dan.
My brother and I actually saw a gnome when I was 12 years old, when he was 10 years old.
Right.
And we were up in the mountains up at Mammoth Lakes up in California in the Sierra Nevadas. And we were hiking up there, and as we were hiking up one of the trails, we actually saw this little man, this gnome, come out of the bushes over on our right-hand side, and then he crossed over our path, and we were about maybe 10 feet back. And he marched up the path a little ways, and then he went back across the path into another set of bushes by a tree. And my brother and I just stopped there, and we were stunned. We're going, did you see that? And he goes, well, yeah, I saw it. And so we ran up there to where the bushes were, where he went, and he was gone.
Were there caves around there?
I'm sorry?
Were there caves around where you were?
No, not where we were. It was a real heavily wooded area, though.
Okay. A lot of sightings are around caves, but of course heavily wooded areas would work also. Did you happen to notice what he was wearing or carrying?
He had a red pointed cap on.
Okay, that's consistent.
Blue type smock, and he had gray pants. Okay. And he had a belt around him, like a big brown belt.
They usually wear a belt. Was he carrying a staff, or was he carrying a knapsack?
He had a knapsack with him.
Yeah, they almost always knapsacks are extremely common accoutrement of nature people, especially gnomes.
Well,
so that's a gnome then.
Well, when I went back and we told our parents, of course they didn't believe us.
Right.
But this is way back before, because I'm 45 now. I'm also a retired policeman. And so I know what I saw. And so I'd done some research back then, and this was before computers, and I found that book by Will Hagen, Gnomes. Are you guys familiar with that book?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. And there was another one called Gnomes in the Garden by David and Carol Swing. And I also read that one, and I just couldn't believe how much that I didn't know about gnomes.
Yeah, a lot of those books, though, and in fact many of the books on nature people, tend to be anecdotal stories, or they take things that have become mythology or lore, and they represent them. Where we wanted to make a difference was to actually talk to them directly by asking all the questions that people seem to be interested in and getting answers from them. So our books hopefully are sort of first person. We're getting a lot of the answers directly from them. So you're going to find in the set of 4 books that almost anything you can think of that you'd like to know about them is covered.
But
wow.
Yeah, it's wonderful, though, that there are some other books out there, and some of them have a lot of artistry, too, which is very inspiring. And that first book that you mentioned, Gnomes, I remember seeing that book early on when we were starting to get involved with the nature spirits, and that was very inspiring to me also. And after reading that book, that is where I developed a lot of questions that I wanted to ask the gnomes to find out firsthand what was true and what was not, because as far as I know, I think these are the only books where we went to the source directly and got the information. But that's really wonderful that you did some research on that and your experience as well.
Now, Dan, if you and your brother saw a gnome at 10 and 12 years old, I would gather that when you were much younger, you were seeing things like in your bedrooms at night.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, because that seems to be sort of part and parcel. Chances are you have what's called a natural psychic ability. Mm-hmm. When people were psychic in a last lifetime, for example, it'll be more natural for them to have psychic abilities in this lifetime.
Okay.
So people that are psychic have an easier time of seeing nature people, especially when they're younger. But yet you don't technically need to see them.
A lot of people also tell us that they see gnomes for the first time just when they're waking up. They see them on their dresser usually, and the reason for that is because we're kind of coming out of another dimension, and our conscious mind isn't fully on yet. And is that how you might have seen them in your house too?
Matter of fact, it usually was when I was waking up. That's funny.
Yeah, and another instance that people see them a lot of times is when you're either usually elderly, you're kind of getting ready to cross over, and you're kind of going into that astral plane, or if somebody's very, very sick and their conscious mind, again, isn't fully kind of protecting them, they will see nature spirits and even perhaps crossed over relatives that are on the other side as well.
Are you drawn, Dan, to
Wait, guys, we got about a dozen people that want to get through here. So I know you and Dan could connect on this for a while. Let's get to Robert, though, in Eagle, Nebraska, on Coast to Coast AM for Christian von Lauer and for Christopher Valentine. Robert?
Thank you. Yes, I've always wondered about, like horoscopes, how, somebody that's born the same day I do, I was, and how their, horoscope lined up with mine. I kind of wondered about that with the gnomes, like when your luggage thing come around there and stop in front of you. What if I had a bunch of gnomes with me too, I mean, does it work with everybody's gnomes, or, you know what I'm saying?
Well, it could work with everyone's gnomes. Here's the thing. Since the nature people are trying to be a part of your life, and traveling had then become an important part of our lives, they sort of get into that. So they will try and make your life work out as best that it can. So it wouldn't have to be traveling or luggage that they exhibit themselves. Whatever you're doing, as long as you're inviting nature people to be a part of your life, they will make themselves evident.
And speaking of astrology, gnomes have told us they're very, very much interested in the stars. They have told us that they look at the stars every night, much more than humans. They're tracking everything. So astrology is very important to them, as are different dates, especially around solstice times, in particular full moons. So that's interesting that you brought up astrology.
Nature people, by the way, they have told us they very much recognize that there's consciousness associated with planets and stars in large celestial bodies. So that sort of fits into your story as well.
They really go into more detail on that in their new book coming out next year.
All right, let's get to Barbara in Troy, New York, on Coast to Coast. Barbara?
Hello, yes. Hello, authors.
Hi, Barbara.
Christian and
Christopher,
sorry. I bought 50 acres of forested land with 2 streams and a slope in Canada. I've been a Wiccan practicing for 20 years, and I'm very used to seeing with my inner mind the etheric energies as well as, of course, physical things. And what I found is contractors, of course, you can't discuss any of that with them, but they also just typically want to bulldoze tons and tons of trees down, making straight roads. And what I'd like to ask specifically is, where can I go for the way to really get focused information about the land and how to use it from the nature people that are already there, as well as the ones that may be coming along with me. So in other words, I know that we all have our spiritual energies around us.
Are you a tree person, Barbara?
I definitely am.
Okay.
I'm a wood.
I sense that. And this is why I want to say this. Trees actually have spirit associated with them also. We don't tend to call them nature people, but we do call them tree spirits. They tend to be a storehouse of information. If you'll somehow just hold that tree, hug it, and let the things come out of you, it's almost like doing meditation. By hugging them and letting the things drain out of you, it creates like a vacuum, and something replaces that vacuum. And in your case, it'll be the insight that you're looking for. But you want it to point you to different directions on the property and land so you know where to build and live, that type of thing.
Barbara, was that your question? You wanted to know more about where to build or how to?
Yeah, because there is going to have to be some tree loss. There is a path on it, but it would be impossible to hug every tree on the.
No, you don't have to. You don't have to hug every tree. There's one in particular. No, I'm just kidding. Just pick one.
Pick one. And pick one. Connecting with tree spirits, we do talk about that in the second book. We actually have a picture of a tree spirit in the second book, Seeing and Sensing Gnomes. And so what Christian is saying is they're also part of nature. And since you are a Wiccan practicing person, get in touch with the tree. And they also have told us that all the trees are connected. It's like birch trees. They found out that it's like a family, and the trees have told us that that's the way it is with all of them. They're kind of all interconnected, so connecting with one of them, I think, is going to be a great idea.
I can give you some real quick insight. You'll need to be by water, because nature people like flowing water, both for magical reasons and health reasons. If there should be pine trees, hopefully, around you, that should be a clue, because pine trees create prana in a natural state, which your body uses.
Okay. Barbara, is that helpful?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, very good. Let's go to Mike on the wildcard line in Livermore, California, for Christian and Christopher. Mike?
Good morning, Ian and Christopher and Chris.
Good morning, Mike.
Morning.
My question's about animals. Wild animals, I would assume, pretty much see nature people all the time. What about domesticated animals? Are they surprised by them? I mean, sometimes when your dog acts up or something, is it because they're surprised by them, or is it because they're doing something strange?
Well, wild animals see wild gnomes, and domestic animals see domestic animals.
Mike, that's a great question. We get that all the time. Domestic animals definitely see the nature spirits, dogs and cats. And we have found through doing so many lectures that people that are really into gnomes tend to have dogs. And people that are really into fairies tend to have cats. And what we used to tell people, because the cats can see the gnomes and they kind of chase them around, and we used to tell people, well, if you have cats, maybe you're not going to have such a good association with gnomes. And the gnomes told us, stop saying that during your radio shows, because gnomes really want to be universally loved. And they said, what we'll do is we'll take care of the cats. We'll just take their tail and tie it around a tree, and we'll be fine.
Let me add something, Mike. Nature people say, and I think actually it was the first book, that they like dolls and teddy bears. And the reason they do that is because they're etheric, people can't have the full experience of them. But if they get a doll or a teddy bear, then they can feel tactile attention from the human, and it's a way of getting that for them. So we found that when the dogs that we have see the teddy bears that the nature people use, they won't go near them.
They respect them, yeah.
Yeah, it's a way of knowing that the dogs actually know their nature people around.
The domestic animals definitely see the nature spirits.
Well, that's great. One last question. When you say that they help out, like your computer goes on the fritz or whatever, is it more likely asking for the help, or did they just, offer it on their own? And does it have anything to do with the character of the person?
Let's do it this way. If you invite them into your house and you give them the job of taking care of the electronics or the computer, then they will fix it on their own. If they're just around you and you haven't engaged them in any way, chances are they don't know that you really want it fixed, and you haven't given them permission to do that. So you have to interact with them.
And when these magical things start happening for you, Mike, as we said earlier, they are a traitor, so do something nice for them. If it's a leprechaun or a gnome you feel, then maybe give them some beer or some of their favorite foods that we talk about in the books, or a copper penny or gold for the leprechauns. But you want to kind of do something special for them, because what happens is we tell people to ask the gnomes and the leprechauns for help, and then they have all these magical things start happening for them. And I says, well, how did you kind of pay them back or do something special for them? And they said, I didn't do anything. So don't forget to do something nice for your nature spirits when these things start happening for you.
And as far as your character question, you cannot command them. You must ask them like you would ask another person.
I like the sort of instructions on how to build a little fairy house.
Yeah, we talk about that in the first book, and they even went in the second book, they went into more detail, the fairies, that is, and we even took a picture of a country fairy house and some of the foods and drinks you could put in there as well, which we go, in all of the books, we try to tell you the different foods and drinks that you can put out for them.
The book Seeing and Sensing Gnomes, Mike, actually shows a fairy house and tells you how to construct it.
And that'll help?
Because they feel like they're being invited into the family when you start putting out statuary or build fairy homes. They feel like you've actually asked them to be part of the family.
Sandy's in Cleveland, Ohio on Coast to Coast AM for Christopher and Christian. Go ahead, Sandy.
Hi, guys. I'm loving this program.
Hi, Sandy.
Hi. Two things. I actually saw what I think is a gnome on one occasion. I had rented a house with the intention of trying to build a relationship with the nature spirits. This was almost 20 years ago. And it was my second summer there. I was out in the garden. I was headed for a mediumship development group. I was running kind of late. I was in the bathroom, and I dropped something off the sink counter, kind of knocked it off. And as I bent down to pick it up, and I kind of looked up because I saw something, I was 10 inches away from something that looked like a Mr. Potato Head.
Yeah.
Little spindly legs, no shirt, but a dark brown skin, looked potato-y skin, and long spindly legs, kind of like dark green pants.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, that sounds more like a brownie to me.
And Cindy, when you, and this goes for anybody, when you think you see something, this is the one time in your life when you want to start saying, I did see something, because when you do that, your mind will say, okay, you really want to see the nature spirits, and it will allow you to start seeing more and more of them.
Well, I definitely saw this one. There's no question. And when I got to the mediumship group, somebody in the group said, Sandy, you have something that I think is a gnome with you. It's hiding under your chair, and it's been curious, and it followed you.
Now, Sandy, I don't want you to think you need to be a medium or psychic to experience nature people, because you don't, because they're here in the physical plane. They're not in the astral plane or mental plane. Those things will help you because your mindset is such that you're willing to. But you could see them without actually using any of those abilities.
Did you have a question, Sandy, that you wanted to ask?
Yeah, but you think that was a brownie rather than a gnome?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, and the other thing is, I'm wondering, here's the question first, have you ever gotten a reaction from any of the elemental nature spirits to, saying a child is interacting with them and somehow an adult comes along and maybe playing, but it's a mischievous kind of play, that the adult objects to it and starts to punish the child? I actually witnessed this one time.
Yeah, that's kind of sad, and that's what we were talking about earlier, is why so many of us have experiences when we're younger and we forget about it or we let it go. And our hope is so many parents are buying these books for their children, and so many grandparents are buying it for their grandchildren. And our hope is that the children that are reading these books, they'll be validated by these experiences and will hopefully keep their gift throughout their entire life.
There's some advanced children's schools where they're actually using our books as part of the curriculum. Actually, the children pick them out, and they read it and teach each other from our books.
Yeah, they have discussion groups. There's like a Montessori school in Chicago that just told us that they're doing that. And these books are really for all ages, so that's really great.
You can link up to Christopher and Christian through the webpage at coasttocoastam.com. While you're there, too, you can click on my blog, which had crypto news from earlier in the show. And we'll get back. Last half hour of questions on fairies, gnomes, leprechauns, elves, the care and feeding thereof on Coast to Coast AM. This is Ian Punnett. Well, it's not just the elves that are happy, as I'm learning here. It's also the fairies and the leprechauns and the gnomes and the, I can't remember the rest of the nomenclature, but you know what I'm talking about. It's all of the nature people, the nature spirits. That's the focus of tonight's Coast to Coast, you can link up to our two authors, Christopher and Christian, through coasttocoastam.com and find out about all of their books. We'll get to all of your questions coming up next on Coast to Coast. This is Ian Punnett. Let's pick up right where we left off, and let's get to as many of the calls as we can before the top of the hour with Christian and Christopher. Tracy is in Las Vegas on Coast to Coast. Tracy?
Hi, guys. How's it going?
Hey,
Great,
Tracy.
I have an interesting story to tell you. Since I was about 2 or 3 years old, all I've been talking about is the forest. I'm a tree lover, and when I was 21, I found out that I was conceived in the forest. And over the past couple of months, I've been dreaming repeatedly of this beautiful green place over and over, and the dreams are getting more vivid. And I don't know why I'm having these dreams and if this place exists, and how can I find out more information about what these dreams are trying to tell me.
Let me ask you a question, Tracy. Do you like the misty part of the forest?
The what?
Misty part. Water vapor?
Yeah.
Because I'm picking up an elf connection, and that's a distinguishing characteristic of them. Before you go to bed at night, you must tell your mind that it needs to remember the dream. You're trying to remember the components of the dream, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm, yes.
Because when you dream, your consciousness is sort of seated in the other plane that you go over to.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes back, it can't reconcile the experience over there with what you know here. So if you tell yourself before you go to sleep that you want to remember it, there'll be some bit of control going on, and your mind will try to pick up a lot of characteristics, and it will give them to you in a raw form, the way they actually occurred. Otherwise, when you wake up, your brain is going to try and interpret them, and since there isn't a one-to-one correlation between the physical world and the astral world, it's going to make a lot of substitutions.
Mm-hmm.
You just need to tell yourself beforehand. Now, nature people also help you do those things. You can ask them if you actually have a connection going on with them. Because I pick up this connection with you and water, there's another way that might work. Do you do divination of any sort with a pendulum?
No, I haven't tried that yet, but I do astrology.
I actually didn't want to suggest it. I just was picking up something about reflections with you, and I really wanted to know if you were doing scrying, where you look into water. Do you find yourself mesmerized by water?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I was picking up, actually. That's a form of divination. I'm getting that you can actually stare into that and let your eyes diffuse a little bit. Don't try to make anything out of what you're seeing, and you'll probably be getting a remembrance of what occurred when you were dreaming, the way it happened. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
That should work for you.
And by the way, Tracy, also practicing nature spirit's one of the best things that you can do for everybody that's listening too, is to diffuse your eyes. You want to let your eyes go soft. You don't want to be focusing really hard.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is that helpful?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, very good. Let's go to John in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. For Christian and Christopher, you can link up to them through coasttocoastam.com. John?
Yes, Ian, how are you?
Hi, John.
Very good.
I've been waiting 30 years for this interview. This is terrific.
Okay.
And the books, it's hard to read up on this sort of thing, so I appreciate it. I wanted to know more about sylphs and salamanders. Are they in the same reign? I know you said that sylphs are a little bit higher than what did you say, gnomes or fairies? Or
Sylphs are a very, very high nature spirit.
Yes.
And all nature spirits will eventually evolve to the point of sylphs. Now, the leprechauns, however, have indicated that there is a strong connection between sylph, salamanders, and leprechauns. So they actually divide up a little differently than we would do it.
As well as genies.
But sylphs are kind of high, and you're not going to experience them as a visual person like we see little people. So you're going to have to rely pretty much on your telepathic ability.
Right.
Salamanders, would you like some help on seeing salamanders?
I just want to know what they do, what they are.
Okay.
And is it possible to fall in love with these people? These things?
You can fall in love with them, but not, how can I put this, because of their nature.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that they appreciate you so very, very much, and that they have known you from lifetime to lifetime, you will have a love for them. but they will still seem to be different than we are. It's sort of like a dog or a cat. You may love them, but it's hard to be in love with them because there's enough distinction between the two types of life.
It's so cool, Christopher and Dr. Christian, that you actually brought them into your family. Is it possible to hurt their feelings?
That's a really interesting question.
It's a really good question because sometimes you think you are, because they mimic so much. They pick up so many things from television and from people. They will act out, and you may think you are, but they sort of learn to be that way. Technically, because of their nature, being so loving and only being able to relate to higher and positive things, technically you're not hurting their feelings.
Kind of like a dog and a cat, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's funny because we just celebrated Christmas, and gnomes and all the nature spirits really, really love the holidays, especially Christmas.
I'll bet.
And it's kind of hard for me because we have so many now that I try to make sure that everybody gets a present or is included in some way. And Peter John, who's on the cover of the first book, he's the first gnome, and he's kind of led the way for everybody else and for us to start communicating with all the other nature spirits. And I felt like we kind of maybe had hurt his feelings a little bit in that he didn't have a major present just for him a few days ago. And he says, and it's kind of like what Christian just said. He kind of acts out in how you see kind of people on television. He's like, oh, don't worry about me. It's okay. So it's kind of funny that way. But I think what Christian was saying is I don't think you can hurt their feelings that much, and they understand that you appreciate them so much, and you try to include them, and that's what's important.
Well, good, because
the ones that will tend to have the more feeling will be the earth nature people, or the fairies or the elves, but there are other nature spirits that don't demonstrate feelings so much. Now, the salamanders we didn't talk about much.
Right,
That's the spirit of the flame. No books tend to tell you how to see them, but we finally figured it out after many years. You have to look into the flame, then look up a few inches and over to the right a few inches, and you'll start seeing elongated facial expressions. And that's how you'll get your experience.
Can you tell me about the name salamander?
Salamander is again, an old Persian name relating to spirits associated with the flame.
Okay. Let's go to, but not related to the reptile of the same name.
No, evolution went through a fire state initially, so there are a lot of spirits. The first ones would be related to the flame, but they continue to exist today, but we only experience them with magic usually.
Okay.
They're usually the action aspect of magic.
Let's get to, I believe next is KC in Jacksonville, Florida, on Coast to Coast AM for Christian and Christopher. KC?
Hi, Ian, Christopher, and Christian. You're just fascinating me.
Thanks.
I had a couple questions. What's hobbit?
What's a hobbit?
A hobbit?
Is a hobbit a gnome?
Is it a bad hobbit or a good hobbit?
I don't know. I'm asking you.
Well, hobbit is actually a humanoid type form. It isn't really a nature spirit. And man evolved. In our evolution, we don't always look the way we do now. Mm-hmm. And a long time ago, we had characteristics that would be more analogous to hobbit.
But is hobbit a purely fictional creature?
Although it's fictional, we did have people that looked like that. Okay. The name hobbit, though, itself is fictional.
Okay. What's a pixie?
That's a great question. You know, for the last few lectures, we've been getting everybody suddenly started asking us, what's a pixie, and are there pixies?
And what's pixie dust?
And that's a great question. We just did the first ever interview of pixies where we asked them all these different questions, and one of the questions we asked them, we said, is there such a thing as pixie dust? And at first they said, no, they didn't really want to go into it, and then in our final edit of the book, they really said, okay, we're going to answer that question. There is such a thing as pixie dust, and it has to do with the etheric energy around them, and it's kind of like when you see Peter Pan shaking Tinkerbell.
I was going to say the beginning of Walt Disney.
Exactly. Well,
when he throws the sparkly dust up.
But they say that pixie dust is really leprechaun dust, which has minerals like emerald and beryl and things like that in it.
Okay. I have another question for you. Have you ever heard of something called a fresh?
I'm not sure about that question.
Okay, all right. Here's the other thing. What about the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow? What's that all about?
Ah, that's a great question, and we did ask the leprechauns that too. And there is an etheric type of pot of gold. First of all, the mineral gold, the physical mineral gold, is very important to the leprechauns, and they said they don't hoard it, but they are very interested in its collection and its maintenance, and they use it for magical properties. But there is an etheric counterpart as well, and that's what Christian just mentioned. Instead of pixie dust, there's kind of like a leprechaun dust, and they said those pots of gold do exist on the etheric plane, and they dip into that, and they use that leprechaun dust, which is gold-looking and sparkling and everything like that associated with it, and they use that in their magic.
Actually, Casey, I should add that part of what they're trying to collect in that pot of gold, supposed pot of gold, is the type of matter that actually helps them transition between this physical plane and the lower astral plane, helps them move back and forth. But it also, because of that property, allows them to do magical things and manifesting type things. Now, there's another association with gold, and that's actually the plant. They tend to say it in many ways, the marigold plant is very, very special to them, and some legends even will say that the marigold is actually the pot of gold.
And sunflowers is also associated with leprechauns, and that's a great place to view them. If you have sunflowers going around, you probably have leprechauns around you. And they also said that's the only time they stand up. They said that every seed in a sunflower is a dream waiting to come true. And by the way, if you'd like to attract leprechauns to you, gold is very important to them. And what we tell people is instead of trying to wish gold from leprechauns or trying to find that gold at the end of the rainbow, a great gift to give to the leprechauns is gold. A lot of people have maybe one earring and they can't find the other, and they have nothing to do with it. You know, they really aren't able to use it anymore. That would be a great gift to give to a leprechaun. They would very much appreciate that. And you can put that in the area in your garden that you designate for leprechauns, or even in your home. We have a little dresser where we put things for the nature spirits that can be kept for them, and you will be amazed at they will want to reciprocate in some way to you. We just tell people you don't want to do it because you want to get something in return. You just want to do it selflessly, but you will be rewarded in a very special way by the leprechauns.
MJ is in Lawrenceburg, Indiana, for Christian and Christopher. MJ?
Hello, gentlemen. I was wondering, do they marry? How do they procreate, or do they just look up in the
Well, let's let Chris take the first question. I'll take the second one.
Well, nature people do have families just like us. They do get married. They do have children, and I think Christian will go into a little bit more detail on the procreation question.
Nature people have children, but it's always towards the end of their lifetime, just like they age towards the end. Once they've lived most of their life, then they will start living together as personal family, whereas they're more group-oriented when they're younger. But at that stage where they have like their own individual family, then they procreate. But it's not the way we do, because they're etheric beings. It's their energy allows them to divide, and they start developing other nature people.
So much of the information from the books is from children of the gnomes, leprechaun children, very young fairies, and as well as the elves.
We had a coast-to-coast show on a couple of months ago about reports of human to spirit sexual encounters. And it was very interesting, and there were stories that had gone back quite a few years, and many people that were on the record with their whole names and talking about it, and then we took a lot of calls like that too. Anything like that in the nature world?
It doesn't happen in the nature kingdom, although a lot of mythology will express that. It's something that happens with the spiritual beings of man, which means we are connecting with spirit in the astral plane. In particular, if that occurs, you're dealing with spirit that's in the lower realms of the astral plane. That astral plane is divided into 7 levels, and you're reaching the first 1, 2, or 3 levels, which isn't always the best level to reach to. Or else, you actually have some sort of romantic connection. In that case, you may be connecting with someone at that 4th level, which is the good level, the one we all tend to go to. And you're actually drawing them to you. Now, I have found that a lot of times this has something to do with soulmate connection as well. So you may be attracting your soulmate, because it's possible to do that just before you go to sleep at night, in which case they see your light. That's a term, by the way. You glow on the other side. They see your light, and they resonate with it, and it's like two tuning forks that match. They find you, and they will come to you. But that's mainly a physical spirit form.
Okay. John is in Shola, Arizona for Christian and Christopher. Our time's running tight here, John, so I'll just ask you to do what you can do, okay?
I'll go as fast as I can. Christian, Christopher, Ian, good evening. My name's John. How you spoke earlier of help with electrical things, with cutting through crowds with your luggage. How can I get help to attract the positive part of the universe to me? Today when I left church, I saw a beautiful little home for rent that looks like a cottage you would find in Ireland. I need to live independently. I'm disabled in a very negative situation. I would... the friends I could count on one hand, truly wonderful people, all died within a 5-month period before I became disabled. And I'm struggling. The problem is the rent is very, very reasonable, but it equals the cost of my medication.
All right. Well, I'm glad we're talking about this, because nature people very much are empowering beings. The third book, The Magic of Gnomes and Leprechauns, speak to this. They empower us because they read our minds. They know what's going on with us. They know what we're about. They also know your situation. They can influence things around you. For example, contracts. They can make newspapers flip over, and you're constantly seeing the same location. Like, for example, it's a place that you should move to. They keep putting you in touch with things that will actually satisfy your aspirations. So they will try and work with you. But you have to let them know, especially with leprechauns. You must let them know that you want that interchange. You can write them a note. You can put out statuary. You can build them homes. You can do anything you can to get some sort of relationship going. But communicate with them. They communicate telepathically. All you have to do is hold a simple thought and express it and let it go, and see if you don't get something else that comes back into your mind. You won't hear it verbally, but you'll get some thought in your mind. Now, the way you can test this is nature people tend to be prophetic. So they'll start mentioning things that will happen about 8 to 12 hours in advance, and you'll see a pattern of this. So then you'll have validation that you actually have communication going with nature people. After that point, then you can start listening to them, and you'll find this abundance and change in life that you're looking for.
All right, we have time. Real quick, Elizabeth, you just got to be super fast. Go ahead.
Gentlemen, one evening I saw a pair of green eyes about 1.5 feet from the floor with a green filigree over, and they shone like traffic lights. Would that be anything you could recognize?
It sounds like it could be an elf. Are you drawn to thin trees?
I'm afraid time is out there, so I think he might be an elf. Then.
Or a leprechaun, if it's 1.5 feet.
1.5 feet. That would figure out to that. So go to coasttocoastam.com, link up to Dr. Christian von Lauer and Christopher Valentine, and you can find out more about their books there. And thank you all for being so patient with all of our questions and digressions and all of the new ways we're learning. I promise you I'll try to have a different set of eyes tomorrow, and I'll look forward to reporting back to you sometime on what I can find, okay?
That sounds great, Ian.
In the meantime, thank you both, Christian and Christopher, and everybody else out there. Preparing for the new year, make it something special. Make it something that this year forces you to see through new eyes, too, and to see something that could be in your own life right now, which you don't even know is there. We'll talk to you on New Year's Day. Deus te amat, and I do, too.